Hello, my name is Todd Federman. I teach economics at Montclair State University. In this video, we're going to be looking at utility. We're going to study total utility, marginal utility, which is the change in total utility, and we're going to study the law of diminishing marginal utility. One of the basic economic principles is that behavior is purposeful. People do things for a reason. And one of the things people like to do is maximize their satisfaction or pleasure. To measure this, economists came up with the term utility, which simply defined is the satisfaction you get from consuming a good or service. Now keep in mind, utility is extremely subjective. For example, you might like beef tacos, in which case they give you satisfaction from eating them, but you may have a friend who's a vegetarian, so for them, there's not going to be a lot of satisfaction. To study utility, economists created a unit of measurement called the util. Consumers assign a util value to everything they buy. For example, you might think a tube of toothpaste is worth 15 utils, and a carton of milk is worth 25. What's important is that we have a relative evaluation of one good relative to another. Okay, let's get back to tacos. We're going to take a road trip to a taco restaurant and study the utility from eating 1, 2, 3, 4, or maybe even more tacos. But before we do, we need to define a couple of terms. We're going to do a total and a marginal analysis. Total utility is the total satisfaction from all the units of a good you consume. So if we, in this example, were to eat 4 tacos, it would be the satisfaction we get for all 4. We're also going to do a marginal analysis. The marginal utility is the extra satisfaction you get from consuming the next unit. So if we were to eat a 5th taco, the marginal utility would be the extra utility from just that 5th taco. The marginal utility is the change in total utility divided by the change in quantity. One thing we're going to observe is that the marginal utility declines as we eat more tacos. The first taco is worth more to us than the second, which gave us more utility than the third, and so on, because we're less hungry as we eat more of them. The concept of the marginal utility declining as you consume more of a good is called the law of diminishing marginal utility. So we're going to record total and marginal utility for the consumption of tacos. And we're going to keep in mind that marginal utility is the change in total utility divided by quantity. Here on the left, we're going to have a schedule for marking down our utility for consuming tacos. In the left-hand column, we're going to be looking at tacos consumed per meal. In the middle, we're going to look at total utility. And in the right-hand column, we're going to look at margin utility, the incremental amount of utility from consuming another taco. We're going to chart total utility on the upper right-hand portion of the screen, and we're going to chart margin utility at the bottom right-hand corner. Both of these along the horizontal axis, we're going to have tacos consumed per meal. We're kind of hungry, so we're going to assume we can eat anywhere from 1 to 7 tacos. On the on the y-axis, the vertical axis for total utility, and for the vertical axis for margin utility, we're going to be charting the number of utils. For margin utility, we're going to say our utility goes anywhere from -2 utils to a positive 10 utils for the consumption of a taco. And we're going to be summing up total utility anywhere from 0 to 30 utils. So let's say we arrive at the restaurant, we haven't consumed any tacos yet. So we're going to get a utility of 0. Now let's say we eat 1 taco. Well, we were pretty hungry. So let's assume that gives us a utility of 10 utils. Well, our margin utility is also 10. We originally had 0 utils from consuming tacos. We said the first one was worth 10, so the marginal utility was 10, and the total utility was 10. So let's graph the marginal utility at 10, and we're also going to graph our total utility of 10. Now we're still hungry, so we have a second taco. Well, that's not going to be nearly as satisfying as the first, so let's assume we get an additional 8 utils. That brings our total utility to 18 utils. Our additional margin utility of 8, we're going to chart down below. We originally had 10 utils, so now our second taco brings us a total utility of 18 utils. Well, the third taco, we're still a little hungry, so we're going to get an additional 6 utils, not quite as much as the second taco. So we chart 6 utils on our marginal utility, and that takes our total utility from 18 to 24. A fourth taco likewise doesn't give us as much utility as the third, so we pick up 4 utils, and our total utility goes from 24 to 28. A fifth taco, well, we're getting pretty full. We only pick up an additional 2 utils of marginal utility, which brings our total utility from 28 to 30. And now a sixth taco, we're really full. It's not going to provide any additional utility. So our total utility stays at 30. We're not going to chart anything on margin utility because the margin utility was 0. We really should stop here, but we had a little bit of money left in our budget. We decided to have a seventh taco, and that's a mistake. It actually makes us a little bit nauseous, so our utility goes backwards. We suffer a negative 2 utils. So our margin utility actually declines by 2 utils, and our utility, total utility, which had been at 30, declines to 28. Now, let's take our bar charts and let's draw a line through the peak of every single bar. So our marginal utility we see is declining, and in the example I've used here, it declines at a constant rate, but in reality that's probably not the case. It probably has some variation to it. And when we chart our total utility, what we notice is that as we are increasing, we keep going up, but at a slower and slower rate. As our marginal utility gets smaller for each additional taco, our total utility keeps climbing, but at a slower and slower rate. This is known as the law of diminishing marginal utility. So marginal utility is change in total utility divided by change in quantity. Total utility is on the vertical axis, quantity is on the horizontal axis. So marginal utility, which is change in total utility over change in quantity, is the change in what's on the y-axis divided by the change in what's on the x-axis. But that's just the slope. So the slope of total utility is the marginal utility. Easiest to see when the quantity goes from 5 to 6. When we consumed the 6th taco, we got no additional marginal utility. The slope of the total utility curve at 6 is 0, but that's what the marginal utility is at 6. And at every point along the total utility curve, whatever the slope is at that point, the slope of the tangent line is the height of the marginal utility line. The shape of the marginal utility curve, declining as we consume more and more of a good, which causes our total utility curve to climb but at a slower and slower rate, is known as the law of diminishing marginal utility. And it's not just for tacos. How about televisions? A first television in a household would provide a lot of utility, as now you can watch television. A second TV would allow you to watch it in another room, but wouldn't have anywhere near the utility of the first. Same thing for cars. A first car in a household would allow you to get to work or get to school. A second car would have more utility, but not as much as the first. Could you imagine having so many cars that you had negative utility? Well, if you actually had too many cars per household, you'd have to spend time moving them out of the way to get a certain car out of the driveway. So we've examined utility, but we haven't talked about money. In the next video, we're going to talk about utility and relate it to our limited budget. Hope you enjoyed the video. My name is Todd Federman. I teach economics at Montclair State University. See you next time.